Dr. Evan Harris had always felt more at home among the towering peaks and secluded valleys of Corvax 3 than he ever did in the bustling cities of Earth. As a field medic and botanist, the rugged terrain offered him both sanctuary and a rich bounty of medicinal plants rarely found elsewhere in the galaxy. It was his personal Eden, far removed from the complexities of interstellar politics and the wars that often accompanied them. On a clear morning, with the twin suns of Corvax 3 just beginning to crest the horizon, Evan set out with his gear to collect samples from a particularly rare lichen known to possess regenerative properties. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of juniper and the distant calls of native cliff birds. He trekked along a familiar path that wound its way up the mountain, his mind occupied with thoughts of his latest botanical experiments. Suddenly, the tranquility of the morning was shattered by a brilliant streak of light that slashed across the sky. Evan paused, shielding his eyes as he watched a small craft, a spacecraft by the looks of it, careen wildly before crashing into the mountainside several kilometers away. The impact sent a plume of smoke and debris into the air, stark against the pale blue sky. Instinct and training took over. Evan grabbed his medical kit, always packed and ready for emergencies, and hurried toward the crash site. As he approached, the smell of burnt metal and scorched earth filled the air, a stark contrast to the natural alpine aromas. The craft was small, likely a one-person escape pod, and it was a wreck. The hull was ruptured and twisted, parts of the chassis still glowing from the heat of re-entry. Inside he found the pilot, a female alien, unconscious and badly injured. Her skin was a pale lavender, almost translucent, with faint bioluminescent lines running along her arms and face. Her breathing was shallow, labored, and she was bleeding from several deep lacerations. Evan quickly assessed her condition, noting the severity of her injuries. She needed immediate medical attention if she was going to survive. Carefully, he administered emergency first aid, using biofoam to seal the worst of the wounds and a portable IV drip to replenish her fluids and electrolytes. He then prepared a makeshift stretcher from materials salvaged from the wreckage to transport her to a more stable location where he could better treat her. With the alien woman now somewhat stabilized but still unconscious, Evan managed to move her to a nearby cave that served both as a shelter from the elements and a makeshift field hospital. Once there, he set about performing a more thorough examination. Her physiology was surprisingly compatible with human medical technology, a fortunate coincidence that allowed Evan to use his full range of equipment to monitor her vitals and administer the necessary medications. As he worked, he couldn't help but wonder about her identity and what chain of events had led to her violent descent through the atmosphere. The craft bore no markings that he could identify. It was sleek, obviously advanced, and designed for stealth and speed. She wore a flight suit of unknown material that was both light and highly durable, fitted with technology that had mostly shorted out upon impact. Hours turned into a day, and slowly the alien began to show signs of recovery. Her breathing stabilized, and the color returned to her cheeks, the bioluminescent lines on her skin glowing more brightly now, pulsing softly, in rhythm with her heartbeat. It was during one of these monitoring sessions that she finally regained consciousness. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that shimmered with a metallic gold hue, adjusting slowly to the dim light of the cave. Confusion was evident on her face as she tried to sit up, only to wince in pain. "Easy," Evan soothed, gently pressing her back down. "You've been through quite an ordeal. I'm Dr. Evan Harris, and you're safe here. Can you tell me your name?" The woman looked at him, her gaze piercing yet fearful. "Lyris," she whispered hoarsely. "My name is Lyris." "Lyris," Evan repeated, offering her a small smile. "Well, Lyris, you're lucky to be alive. Do you remember what happened?" Lyris's eyes clouded with a mix of emotions, fear, anger, and sorrow, as she recounted her story in a low, tremulous voice. She was fleeing, she explained, from a life of constraints and expectations. Her father, a figure of significant power and influence, had planned a life for her that she could not accept. As she spoke, Evan listened intently, his professional demeanor comforting. He provided her with pain relief and hydration, watching as she slowly regained her strength. It became clear that whatever her origins, Lyris was a fighter, a rebel against her circumstances. and as the stars began to light the night sky outside their mountain refuge, a bond formed between the human medic and the alien princess, founded on mutual respect and a shared sense of defiance against the destinies prescribed to them. As Lyris regained strength under Evan's care, their conversations deepened, each sharing stories from their respective worlds. Lyris, who initially guarded her words cautiously, began to open up about her heritage and the stifling life she had escaped. Her father was the ruler of a distant and influential planet known for its rigid adherence to tradition and power. As his only child, she was expected to follow in his footsteps, her every move scrutinized and controlled. "In my world," Lyris explained, her voice a mix of defiance and sorrow, "freedom is a luxury few can afford, least of all the heir to the throne. I was a symbol, a puppet, never a person with dreams or desires of my own." Evan listened intently, his expression a blend of empathy and curiosity. "And you decided to leave it all behind," he said, not as a question, but as a recognition of her courage. "Yes," Lyris affirmed, her eyes meeting his with a flicker of resolve. "I took the first opportunity I saw, a diplomatic shuttle meant for interstellar negotiations. I knew it was my only chance." Their discussions often lasted late into the night, with Evan sharing tales of Earth, its diverse cultures, and his decision to leave behind a bustling city life for the frontier of space medicine. He talked about his passion for botany and how it led him to Corvax 3, seeking peace among its mountains and rare medicinal plants. "Your stories are so different from mine. Yet I feel a connection," Lyris admitted one evening, the glow from the cave's bioluminescent fungi casting soft shadows on her face. "You understand what it's like to seek something more than what life has handed you." As Lyris continued to recover, Evan introduced her to the natural wonders of Corvax 3. They began short walks around the vicinity of the cave, where Evan taught her about the local flora and their uses in medicine. Lyris, fascinated by the planet's biodiversity, absorbed the information eagerly, her natural curiosity unrestrained by the confines of royal duties. One day, while collecting samples near a stream, they encountered a plant Evan had been studying for its unique regenerative properties. "This is Ceralonia indigus," he explained, handing her a leaf to examine. "It accelerates cellular regeneration, potentially useful in treating a wide range of ailments." Lyris examined the leaf closely, her tactile senses enhanced by her alien biology, interacting subtly with the plant. "It's beautiful," she remarked, "and it reminds me of a similar species on my home planet, though ours is used more for ritual than healing." Their shared interest in botany and healing drew them closer, turning professional respect into a deep, meaningful friendship. Evan found himself looking forward to their daily excursions and discussions, appreciating Lyris's insights and her unique perspectives on the natural world. However, their peaceful exploration was abruptly interrupted one afternoon when they detected a signal anomaly near their location, an indication that their presence might have been discovered. Evan's first thought was for Lyris's safety, his protective instincts kicking in despite her royal capabilities. "We need to be cautious," he warned, his eyes scanning the rugged landscape for any signs of incoming threats. "It's possible that scouts or drones have been sent to look for you." Lyris nodded, her expression turning serious. "I knew this peace wouldn't last forever. I have enemies, Evan, and they won't stop until they've brought me back. Or worse." Determined to protect the freedom she so dearly fought for, Lyris and Evan prepared to defend themselves against any potential threats. They enhanced their surveillance around the cave and set up rudimentary alarms using Evan's equipment. As the suns of Corvax 3 set, casting a crimson glow over the mountains, Evan and Lyris stood side by side, watching and waiting. Their bond, formed in the solitude of the mountains and cemented through shared knowledge and mutual respect, was about to be tested by the forces that sought to reclaim Lyris to her former life. But together, they were determined to face whatever challenges came their way, fighting not just for Lyris's freedom, but for the right to choose their own destinies. As the days passed, the tension surrounding Evan and Lyris escalated. Their routine checks for surveillance turned up nothing initially, lending a false sense of security that perhaps Lyris's flight had gone unnoticed by those pursuing her. Yet Evan couldn't shake the feeling of an impending confrontation, his instincts honed by years of survival in harsh environments, keeping him alert. One morning, while analyzing data from a remote sensor they had placed near the edge of the mountain range, Evan noticed an anomaly, an encrypted transmission not originating from any known friendly source. "We have company," Evan declared, his voice low as he showed Lyris the data. Lyris, standing close by in their makeshift lab within the cave, leaned over to examine the screen. Her eyes narrowed as she parsed the information, her experience as a royal giving her insight into covert operations. "This isn't just a scouting party," she deduced, her voice tense. "It's a tactical team. They're here to retrieve me, dead or alive." Realizing the gravity of their situation, Evan and Lyris sprang into action. They began fortifying their temporary shelter, turning it into a defensible position. Evan tapped into his knowledge of the terrain and set up various natural deterrents and traps, using the mountain's resources. Vines converted into tripwires, sharp rocks positioned as crude caltrops, and the more volatile plants rigged to create a smokescreen if disturbed. Lyris, meanwhile, prepared herself mentally and physically for the confrontation. She practiced with Evan, honing her energy manipulation skills to defend herself without causing lethal harm. "I don't want to kill anyone," she confided in Evan, "but I will protect us." Their preparations proved timely. Just as the twin suns of Korvax 3 began to set, casting long shadows over the rugged landscape, the first signs of the enemy's approach were detected. A slight rustling not attributed to the wind, the faint hum of energy weapons powering up, and then the unmistakable sound of boots on gravel. Evan and Lyris took their positions, their breaths steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through them. The attackers were skilled, moving with precision and stealth, but Evan's traps slowed their advance, causing confusion and disarray within their ranks. The initial confrontation was intense. A small squad of heavily armed soldiers emerged from the cover of the nearby forest, their weapons trained on the cave. Lyris stepped forward, her figure illuminated by the setting sun, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I do not wish to fight," she called out, her voice echoing against the mountainside, "but I will not go with you." The leader of the squad, a grizzled veteran with scars marking his visible skin, sneered at her offer. "You have no choice, princess," he retorted, his hand tightening on his weapon. It was then that Evan acted. Using a remote control, he triggered one of the non-lethal traps they had set up, a net made of strong, fibrous vines. It ensnared several of the attackers, pulling them off their feet and causing momentary chaos. Lyris used the distraction to her advantage. Her hands glowed with a soft light as she manipulated the ambient energy, creating a blinding flash that temporarily disoriented the remaining soldiers. She and Evan used this opportunity to retreat further into the cave, where Evan had set up a fallback position. The attackers regrouped quickly and pursued them into the cave, unaware of the extent of the preparations Evan and Lyris had made. As they advanced, Evan unleashed another of his traps, a cascade of small rocks and debris, funneled through a narrow passageway that acted like a chute. The torrent of stones battered the soldiers, halting their progress and allowing Evan and Lyris to move deeper into their labyrinthine refuge. For hours, the siege continued, with the attackers trying to flush out Evan and Lyris using smoke bombs and small explosives. But the duo had the advantage of terrain and preparation. Using the cave's multiple exits and natural choke points, they managed to evade capture, all the while parleying for a peaceful resolution. As dawn approached, with both sides exhausted and resources depleted, a temporary ceasefire was called. The leader of the attackers, recognizing the futility of further aggression and impressed by Lyris's resolve and Evan's ingenuity, proposed a negotiation. Lyris, with Evan by her side, agreed to talk, hoping to resolve the conflict without further bloodshed. They met at the mouth of the cave, the first light of dawn casting a hopeful glow over the tense gathering. As the first rays of dawn kissed the rugged peaks of Korvax 3, Lyris and Evan stood at the mouth of the cave, facing the leader of the tactical team, Commander Rigel. The ceasefire, while tenuous, offered a momentary respite and a chance for dialogue, something Evan was keen to capitalize on. "Commander, why the aggression?" Evan began, his voice steady despite the fatigue that pulled at his limbs. "We've defended ourselves, yes, but there's been no aggression from our side. Commander Rigel, a grizzled veteran of many interstellar conflicts, eyed Evan with a mixture of respect and suspicion. "You harbor a fugitive of the crown," he stated flatly, his gaze shifting to Lyris. "Her return is non-negotiable." Lyris stepped forward, her posture regal even in her worn and dirtied attire. "I am no fugitive, Commander. I am merely a daughter seeking freedom from a destiny I never chose. Why must my search for peace be met with violence?" The question seemed to hang in the cool morning air, and for a moment, Evan saw a flicker of doubt in Rigel's eyes. It was clear the commander was following orders, perhaps disagreeing with them on some level. "We can offer assurances of her safety," Evan interjected, sensing the opportunity. "Let us communicate directly with her father, the king. Surely we can find a peaceful resolution that respects both Lyris's wishes and the crown's concerns." Commander Rigel considered this, then nodded slowly. "I will arrange for communication with the king, but know this," he added, his voice hardening. "If the negotiations fail, we will take Lyris by force if necessary." As Rigel coordinated the communication setup, Evan and Lyris prepared their case. They gathered evidence of Lyris's life on Corvax 3, her contributions to Evan's medicinal research, and testimonials from other settlers about her positive impact on their community. Later that day, a holographic projector was set up outside the cave, the device flickering to life to reveal the imposing figure of King Thalos, Lyris's father. His expression was stern, his eyes searching as they settled on his daughter's face. "Father," Lyris began, her voice clear despite the lump in her throat, "I have found a life here where I can make a real difference, where I am more than just an heir." King Thalos's face remained impassive as he listened to his daughter speak of her new life, her passions, and her plea for autonomy. Evan stood beside her, supporting her not just physically, but as a steadfast ally in her fight for self-determination. When Lyris finished, the king's gaze shifted to Evan. "Dr. Harris, you have taken my daughter in, aided her, and now defend her. Why? What do you seek to gain?" Evan met the king's gaze squarely. "Nothing, Your Majesty, except perhaps the continued joy of seeing someone realize their potential away from the shadows of predestination. Lyris is remarkable, not just as a princess, but as a person." The conversation continued, with Evan and Lyris advocating for a sanctuary, not just for Lyris, but for others who sought refuge from the conflicts and constraints of the wider galaxy. They proposed that the king consider transforming part of Corvax 3 into a recognized asylum under universal laws, offering protection and peace to all who sought it. King Thalos listened, his expression softening as he considered the passion and conviction in his daughter's voice and the sincerity in Evan's plea. After a long pause, he spoke, his voice resonant through the holographic connection. "Lyris, if you truly believe this is your path, I will not force you to return. However, I cannot ignore the traditions and stability of our people. I will agree to your terms under one condition," he proposed, pausing for emphasis. "I wish to see this sanctuary for myself. I will come to Corvax 3, and if what you say holds true, we will talk of making this a reality." Relief washed over Lyris and Evan, though they knew this was only the beginning. Preparations began for the king's visit, a visit that would decide the future of not just Lyris, but potentially many others seeking a new start away from the turmoil of the galaxy. As they organized the upcoming royal tour, Evan and Lyris grew ever closer, their partnership strengthened by adversity and the shared dream of a peaceful haven on Corvax 3. Preparations for King Thalos's visit were intense and meticulous. Evan and Lyris, along with a small but dedicated team, worked tirelessly to showcase the sanctuary not just as a refuge, but as a thriving community where innovation in peace and healthcare flourished. The landscape of Corvax 3, once barren and isolating, had transformed under their care into a testament to what could be achieved with determination and collaboration. The day of the king's arrival was marked by a palpable tension mixed with cautious optimism. The community gathered, their diverse faces, a mosaic of species and origins, reflecting the sanctuary's broad impact. As the royal ship descended, its sleek design cutting through the Corvax 3 sky, all activity paused, every eye turned skyward. King Thalos emerged from his vessel with the grace and authority of his station, his regal attire stark against the rugged mountain backdrop. His entourage, a mix of royal guards and advisors, followed, their expressions unreadable. Evan greeted them first, extending the formalities to a visiting monarch, but with the sincerity of a host proud of what they had built. "Your Majesty, welcome to Corvax 3, he announced. "We are honored to have you here." King Thalos nodded, his gaze sweeping over the assembly before settling on Lyris. "My daughter," he addressed her, his voice a complex blend of sternness and relief. "Show me this world you've chosen over your crown." Lyris led her father through the sanctuary, starting with the medical facilities where Evan's expertise had flourished into a center for advanced healing practices. They showcased innovative uses of local flora, integrated with off-world technologies to treat illnesses once considered incurable. They walked the paths of their agricultural zones where hybrid techniques bred sustainability, the educational spaces that welcomed learning from all cultures, and the residential areas where former refugees now lived with dignity and hope. Throughout the tour, Lyris spoke passionately about their vision, the community's achievements, and their plans for the future. The residents, in turn, shared their stories, tales of newfound peace and opportunities, each a powerful testament to the sanctuary's impact. King Thalos listened, his expression unreadable, absorbing every detail, every word. As the tour concluded, the group gathered in the community hall, a simple but spacious structure designed to blend into the surrounding landscape. Here, Evan prepared to make a final appeal to the king, not just for Lyris' sake, but for the future of all who had found refuge in their mountain sanctuary. "Your Majesty," Evan began, standing beside Lyris at the front of the hall. "What you've seen today is more than a project or a haven. It's a potential blueprint for a new kind of community, one that values life and freedom above heritage and history." King Thalos stood, his presence commanding the room. "I have seen much today," he declared, "and I am moved by what you have accomplished. It is rare that a father learns from his daughter, yet today I have." Turning to Lyris, his voice softened. "You have built something extraordinary, Lyris, not just for yourself, but for all these people. You have my blessing to continue, and my support." The room erupted in quiet cheers and relieved sighs, the tension dissolving into a hopeful murmur. "But I ask something in return," the king continued, causing a hush to fall once more. "This sanctuary, let it be a beacon, a place of learning and peace that extends beyond Corvax 3. Let us share this model, promote it across the stars as a symbol of what can be achieved when we dare to imagine a better future." Evan and Lyris exchanged a glance, a mixture of surprise and elation. "We would be honored, Your Majesty," Lyris responded, her voice steady with newfound purpose. King Thalos then approached Evan, extending a hand not just in gratitude, but in partnership. "Dr. Harris, you have not only saved my daughter's life, but have helped guide her to her true potential. For that, you have my deepest thanks." As the assembly dispersed, filled with a renewed sense of purpose and excitement, Evan and Lyris stood together, looking out over the sanctuary. They had faced uncertainty, conflict, and had come through it stronger, their vision for the future now endorsed by one of the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. "Looks like we're just getting started," Evan remarked, a grin spreading across his face. Lyris nodded, her hand finding his. "Yes, we are. Together." Together, they turned to face their community, ready to lead them into a new era. An era of peace, growth, and endless possibilities.